part of this process, because we just had a conversation with the Division of Principals this morning about it. And that is the process that we use during these application periods for the wait list. The wait list started a couple of years ago, and they were a big component of what we were doing with the choice plan here, with giving parents opportunities to, if they weren't processed the first go round, to have a wait list and then process that wait list. I think we've been processing it twice. Yeah. Prior to the start of the next school year. And we've had some difficulties with schools, especially looking at the second wait list, which occurs later in the summer, and the implications that it may have for staffing and the number of students that they have and how they've planned out their classes. So feedback from principals would support moving to one wait list processing as opposed to two wait list processing, and for it to coincide more closely with how they receive their allocations and allotments for staff. And so I told them that we would bring that conversation to the board table, because there are pros and cons to multiple wait list processing versus once.
And what is the timing of you requiring some feedback from the board?
So when would our first wait list be?
Well, the first wait list is usually processed in April, early to mid-April. And then the second wait list was processed in early June. And that's the one we're really talking about, that is pretty late, interfering with the several other
and in
processes.
particular the year-round schools.
Yeah, yeah. The difference in the number of students we seat with each wait list is significant. The bulk of students are seated that first time, and then the second time, not that many students are seated.
And if we process the wait list one time, parents do still have access to the transfer process if they were to choose to avail themselves of that process.
Zora and then Jim, sorry.
Okay. Back to that little slip of paper. Maybe we could think about using the PTSAs, because a lot of children take that little slip of paper and it never comes home.
We do when we
With the
send,
PTSAs.
when we send them to the schools, we ask the principals to use their communication processes to get the word out that these are coming home.
That's helpful. I get a call from our principal at our major call to say, hey, please look for the yellow sheet.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
even if a child doesn't bring it, there
Because
should
little
be
slips of
second
paper
communication.
are in the bottom.
Well, it's now a full-size sheet of
Yeah.
paper. Yes.
Trifold.
It used to be just
It's
a
yellow.
little
Trifold.
It's a trifold, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's very user friendly.
Because self-assing, it might just take up more
That's
room
true.
at the bottom.
That's true.
Easy to lose, right?
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Dr. Martin, any final question?
Well, with regard to the wait list, I would be resistant to going to a single wait list processing. I don't know about my colleagues, but I understand it from the principal standpoint and the staffing. That makes complete logical sense. From the parent standpoint, the other, having, that we dissolve it in June is already a frustration. And as a board member, when we look at our transfer appeals, I know that we routinely get into the difficult situation that we're trying to be consistent, but if a person has their transfer at a time when an opening comes, then they tend to get in, whereas if you happen to have had your appeal at an earlier date when it wasn't possible, then you don't get in. And so there gets to be that leapfrog inconsistency. So I would like our review of wait lists to last as long as reasonably possible from a selection standpoint. That's my opinion.
And speaking with board members, I think that this will be a topic for some in-depth discussion, so thank you for raising it. Why don't the next executive will put it on a work session for the next meeting or two, so that we can give you some guidance before that first wait list. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to capping proposal.
We want
So we're
to,
gonna, Ms. Lighthall and
Yeah, I
oh,
think-
did you want to?
I think can we?
So we
if
need
so-
Mr. Desiremore, and he's at a county meeting, so we are going to move to East Wake High School redesign initially. So we keep Ms. Moore, and
We
thank
keep
you.
Laura
It was
just
quick.
on the table.
Dr. McFarland, quickly to the computer. I appreciate it. You're not off the school. You might be next, sir.
We did make, I think, one revision to the presentation materials this morning and reloaded it. So long as you've just loaded for the first time in the last couple hours, you should be fine. But
And the East Wake recommendations were first brought to student achievement. It was well received, so glad to bring it to the full board this morning.
So,
And if I may, as student achievement chair, lots of data collected, anecdotal as well as data crunching to suggest that a change is needed. And so I'll leave it at that.
So just, I guess as a brief recap, as Edward is bringing up that presentation and coming up, we did bring to Student Achievement Committee at our last meeting a review of the breakup of East Wake High School that started back in 05-06 and took a couple of years to fully implement into 4 smaller schools. And then the data we've been able to track since then. And as Mr. Fletcher said, some of it came from a qualitative point of view with regards to actual interviews with staff members, administrators, teachers, students past and present, as well as the data that we were able to get regarding the goals initially onset for the project and then where we ended up and what we were able to show there. And we showed a couple of options to the board at the end of that presentation in terms of next steps moving forward with what we may want to do. And the recommended step from staff would be that we reconstitute the high school into one high school as opposed to 4, and then engage in the next year or so in the same type of planning process that we engaged in with the Knightdale area community to look at what we may want to do with the school moving forward so that there's stakeholder buy-in, input, and a process that really identifies data specific to the school, the needs that they may have, and opportunity for input and structure around what we want to do with the school moving forward. So I'm going to turn over the presentation to Edward.
That sounds like the presentation's done.
It's in details here.
Yeah, we'll give you the details here. So obviously today is really to provide that high-level overview, and it really is just some...
The map are to the south and in the central area, Southeast Raleigh High School, and then over to the left and a little bit further up is Broughton High School. So that's where we started with when we were looking at our overflow options. We did not recommend Southeast as an overflow option because their calendar is a modified calendar where they begin school at the end of July, and because overflow students tend to be late registering students that are registering in August and in September, those students would miss a month or more of school, and we did not think that was the best way to proceed with that.
On a block schedule,
Yeah, on a block schedule. That's correct.
as opposed to a Denlow schedule.
And that's a different schedule as well, correct. It's not only, it's a different schedule as well as a different calendar, yes.
But when you miss that much of a block, you missed a lot.
Right. Broughton does have an 8A B day, so it does still have 8 periods, which is more similar. So then, based on the feedback from the board to look at other options, we looked at a second map. And that second map zooms out a little further so that we can take a look at what our other options might be. So here, you zoom out a little further, a couple of additional schools come into the picture. You've got Knightdale High School to the far right, and then to the south, Garner High School comes into the picture. Over here, Athens Drive comes into the picture, and then to the north, you've got Sanderson and Millbrook barely in the picture. So, at the top, but there, Millbrook's not, it's barely in Sanderson.
What's the scale of that map?
Down here in the corner shows you what 1 mile is.
Okay, so Gardner High is not 20 miles away. It's 4 or 5 miles away.
Yes. I will say, though, I believe that Garner High School is getting ready to relocate.
Yes, they are.
So they would be off the map,
Okay.
that map, in the new location where they are going to.